this. I love this film because it's a feel-good film, right? Documentaries sometimes can be so, for lack of a better word, like they're important, but sometimes they can leave you so emotionally drained that you're like, oh God, I need to see a comedy because this is like, I'm so sad now, you know what I mean? But this, I felt you set the right tone. Talk a little bit, how did Walter Mercado get into your life? Was it as kids or were you introduced by someone else? Share with me a little bit how Walter came into your life.
Yeah, I'll take it. So yeah, that's exactly right. We all grew up watching Walter with our grandparents mostly. And so there's this tight association between your abuela and Walter in your heart and mind. And he was like mystifying, you know. It was like he would 5:45 would roll around, he would close out the evening news, you know, and your grandma would shush you, you know, and this wizard would come on TV and tell her the future, you know. And so I think that, you know, the older we got, the more we realized everyone had that experience, you know. we hadn't realized that all these kids like us were having it at the same time.
Yeah, I think for us, you know, I always say that who's my grandmother's age, and he also had my grandmother's haircut. And for us, our love for Walter, I think, is wrapped up in our love for our grandmothers. He was such a pioneer. He was the first person that, in our memories, to look androgynous. You know, he was our first encounter with the idea of genderqueer. And so he always says he was living 100 years in advance, and I think he definitely was. And so as adults, I think the three of us started thinking about, well, all separately, started thinking about what happened to Walter. You know, he was so important in our lives. He had taught us such fundamental lessons about life, you know, to lead your life with love, to work hard, to have hope. And I think the three of us all felt as though the world could use some Walter right now. And so kind of all independently, we started wanting to make a documentary about Walter. And Alex tells the story very well of how we kind of came to be as a trio.
Yeah, I was introduced to Kareem through a mutual friend, one of the producers of Moonlight. Miami's like a very small kind of film town, so everybody knows each other. And he was like, you and Kareem definitely need to know each other. And the first thing we talked about was Walter. And there was an estate sale that Walter was having in Miami that everyone was very excited about because he was selling capes. And I asked Kareem if he was going, and he said yes. And I said, man, if I could do a documentary about anybody, it would be Walter Mercado. And I knew Kareem was a documentary filmmaker. I was not, at the time. So it was like a little, you should do that. And he was like, yeah, obviously. I mean, that's part of the reason that I'm going. And I was like, I would love to help in any way. And we set a time to talk a few weeks later after he had met one of Walter's nieces. And half an hour before we were set to talk, Christina called me, and she had been working on a film at the time, and I thought it was about that, called Science Fair. And she said, hey, I heard you're obsessed with Walter Mercado. I am too. I want to make a movie about him. And I was like, that's very weird, because I am already making one with another filmmaker. In half an hour, we have our first call. But then it occurred to me that like they had different strengths and sensibilities, and that they were both cool, and maybe they'd like get along. And so I asked Kareem if he would be cool with Christina joining, and I asked Christina if she would want to join, and they said yes. And like,
we're all very cool.
I was gonna say, this is the first time anyone has ever described Christina or I as cool.
I know.
And that's the takeaway from this.
Cool to me, asterisk to me.
I mean, listen, it is one of those things that, you know, you have this person coming into your television life, right? And when you're younger, and we're definitely in our culture, in our community, we didn't really explain who Walter represented. But all I knew about it was that when he was giving this horoscope, people hung on his every word. Like, they couldn't get through their day. Okay, so he told me it was going to be great and everything. We really weren't focused on accuracy, you know what I mean? and all of that. And like you said, it was like, you know, as kids, we are not the generation that blurb stuff out. In our minds, we're like, who is this man that kind of looks like Liberace and's got all this hair stuff going on, right?
Yeah.
What I loved also about this is we got to know more about him as a family, as a family man. Where did he come from? How did he get started? Because like I said, is all we knew, I think you said it, Alex, is it's like a genie appeared at the end of the news. You know what I mean? How was it like to get him to open up? Because I felt like sometimes he was very comfortable. Like it's like he had to get into persona. He had the schmuck on, you know, the Buddhist beads. And then there were like other times you kind of caught him at Walter at home. You know what I mean? We got to see the persona and then just him. How was it like being at home with him and getting him to talk about his childhood?
You know, we're documentary filmmakers, so we wanted to get to see the man behind the cape. That was, you know, what we were the most interested in seeing. But he's also a person who was on television for 50 years and has spent his entire career curating a very, very thought out persona, which involves a lot of makeup and a lot of hair and a lot of jewelries. And so it took really spending a lot of time with him and a lot of time with the family and getting the trust of the family and Walter to kind of get to the man behind the cape. And you know, there is near the end of the film, there's more of him kind of in intimate settings, you know, in his bedroom before he's put on all of his makeup, you know, in just a pretty humble, for Walter, very humble bathrobe. And I think that was really in the later stages of filming that we got to see what he actually looked like in his day-to-day. He at first was very confused about what we were trying to do and was like, this is going to be so boring. Nobody's going to want to watch me, watching my Netflix, reading my book. Like this is not what people want to see. So it was definitely a process and a learning process, I think, on both sides. A learning process for Walter and a learning process for us to figure out how to work with a person who's the most media trained, media savvy person, I think, in the universe.
I mean, I agree. I mean, it also goes to show like how he felt comfortable because, and this is the other thing is, right? I was under the impression he had this whole HMA, you know, hair makeup team and stylist, and it's just one guy. Were you like a little shocked too? You're like, wait a minute, this is the team? One guy?
Well,
you know?
you know, it's kind of it is shocking, but it's kind of important to remember it's almost like different levels of Walter. So there's day-to-day Walter, there's nobody but like the closest family in the house, and then he's doing his own face. I mean, he doesn't leave the bedroom without a base face on. That was who he was all the time. Christina loves to tell a story about when his baby grandniece had just been born. He was going to meet her for the first time. He wouldn't let them come in until he did his face and hair for the baby. So that goes to show you. But when it was kind of more full on, all, you know, whole setup, Walter kind of 2.0, there was a bit of a team that would come in and outside of Willie to do that. So like when you see the photo shoot session in the film, there's a hair and makeup person. But he's just kind of, it was one of these people, it didn't matter if he was wearing like a jumpsuit or a bejeweled cape, he was always fabulous. I don't actually think we ever saw him in a jumpsuit, I should say that. But I can imagine him in like a velour jumpsuit and still looking amazing. Like, it's not outside of the realm of possibility.
But, you know, kudos to Willie. And then I almost wanted you to ask Willie, where did you like learn all this stuff? Did he give you like a guide? Okay, this is how we have to do my hair. This is how we're doing the makeup. And this is how you make sure that I do everything. Because, you know, for Willie, it's almost like, you know, he's an extension of Walter. And I don't know, is it because because they spend so much of their lives together and he just utterly is devoted to Walter? But I'm like, Willie, like who, like when did this occur? Like when did you get into the whole Walter Mercado imaging school? Did you get a chance to find out from Willie a little bit, like because it's a lot. You have to be. I feel like Willie made a decision a long time ago to give up his wants and needs to help Walter, and that's a extremely generous thing. Did you find that they had that type of relationship?
Absolutely. I mean, Willie has been with Walter for over 50 years, is it? I mean, they met, Willie met Walter when he was very young, and he basically learned all of those skills on the job. And
he was like 19, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was.
Like that. Very
Yeah,
young.
yeah. If not a teenager, very close to it. He, you know, on all of Walter's oldest television programs, we always see Willie's name as like one of the main producers. So he very much created Walter's persona as well. He is a large part of the look and the aesthetic that is Walter. A lot of, like, you know, he takes care of his robes, he helps commission the robes, he helps with the hair. Like, these are all decisions that Walter and Willie were making together. So yeah, you cannot or overstate the importance of Willie Acosta in the making of Walter.
He would always like to remind us when we were filming him, helping Walter get ready. He would always, right before the camera, he'd turn, I'm no makeup artist or hairdresser. I just help him fix up. He wanted to underscore like that wasn't his actual job all the time, or that he wasn't a professional. But then, you know, half an hour later, Walter looked divine, and you're like, Willie.
No, he's a pro. Like he's
Yeah.
got the brush on. He's got a routine on how we're gonna do this. Like at the photo shoot, right? You see him because the photographer is so enamored. You know, he's getting to shoot Walter Mercado, but Willie's right there to say, "Hold on, he needs a pause. Like this man is older now. You can't work him like that. We need to sit him down." So you definitely see that he's more than just some, you know, novice on this scene. Can we talk about the capes for a minute, right? Yes. Did you get a chance to try one on? Like, come on, you're there and you're like, just for a minute, like, just for your inner self, did you get a chance to be like, ta-da, I'm in the cape?
Every day.
Every day.
Awesome.
We secretly made the movie just so that we could play Walter Mercado drag.
I'm not
like, yeah.
I Marima says on the first shoot, it was kind of like secret. We were like in the room filming his capes, and we were like, should we try one on? Can we try one on? And we did it like kind of like subtly after a shoot. And then by the end, we were there for, you know, 2 years with him shooting, and we would put on the capes every time we could. And he loved it. He loved it when other people would try on his capes. He got a lot of joy from making other people happy. I think that's what we've really learned about Walter is he would give all of his energy to make other people feel happy and seen. And I think the joy that other people had putting on his capes, he also relished in it as well.
Listen, you can't go over there and not at least try one on. That's what I was thinking. I was like, I just had images of you guys being like, okay, take a picture of me. We're not gonna like put it in the film, but I just need it for me.
We have so many pictures. And the capes, you know, the other interesting thing of the capes were that they were so heavy.
Really?
Like each individual cape weighed maybe 15, 20 pounds. Like they were really, really heavy. And many of them, this is kind of like part of the Walter genius and secret, many of them were reversible because he would shoot so many things in one day and have to have different looks that the capes would just turn inside out. It was a completely different design, which also made it like heavier and uncomfortable to wear. But Walter, you know, when he wore them, it was like he was just wearing silk. It was like so light and effervescent, but it wasn't easy.
Well, you can tell.
I'm sorry.
You can tell that he did not want to disappoint his fans. Like he knew that he could not go out there and just like, you know, for him, like I don't think he owns just like jeans and a shirt. Like he knew he had to come like in the whole regalia. And that's one of the things I think I appreciate about him. Like he understood who his fans were and who made him. So for less of a better explanation, does that make sense?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the simplest thing we ever saw him wearing was just, a white linen shirt and white linen pants. That was the simplest thing we'd ever seen him in. I don't think he really owns anything that is informal.
Yeah.
Definitely. Did you ask him, like, as far as his, I mean, I know he talked about theater and him having been a dancer, and he was like stunning as a young man. We can't, you know, disregard that, and how he's theater was a very much a part of who he is. I feel like sometimes did he talk like very like Elvis, that type of thing, maybe a little Liberace, but I feel we give them a lot of credit for the flamboyantness, but Walter doesn't get mentioned in that conversation in terms of like not just the Latino community, but overall, because he was smart enough to learn English, to speak English. He was a mainstream American television, which was not a norm for Latinos during that time. Did he talk a little bit about that? That people seem to think that he was not an innovator in terms of that, you know?
I mean, I think Walter also had a gift for framing. Like, he didn't have a chip on his shoulder because he believed that he had accomplished the thing, even if people said he had. Like, to him, he's like his answer to that would be like, no, my fans love me. They love me in America, right? You know what I mean? Like, so, and in fact, I think part of the reason this movie even exists is because when Christina was editing her film Science Fair with the person who edited our film, Tom Maroney, he's from like Appalachia. He's from West Virginia. He happens to be a gay man. And so he loved Walter, didn't understand a word Walter was saying, but he loved him. And that's, I think, right, Christina, how the conversation
exactly. Tom would sit with his friends in college and watch the fabulousness of Walter Mercado without understanding a single word of what he was saying, just because he was so much, you know, he was a huge Walter Mercado fan. And so when we were editing Science Fair, he said, do you know who Walter Mercado is? And I was like, do I know Walter Mercado? I'm one of his biggest fans. And then that's, I think a day later, I was on the phone with you, Alex, and then we were off to the races.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, the one heartbreak is that, you know, it seems to be a continuous story in entertainment. People getting taken advantage of, people not having somebody in the corner to be like, did you really read the contract? Do you understand that? And I'm glad that it seemed as though Bill didn't quite understand, at least to me watching it, what he did to Walter. Like, you know what I mean? That because Walter comes across a very trusting, very loyal person, and he thought of Bill as more than just a manager, like a member of his family. And there didn't seem to be, in my interpretation, you can correct me if I'm wrong, any remorse on Bill's part. It was more or less like, it's business and that's how business is. And he didn't realize like how hurt Willie was. Is that really what he was saying, or was I imagining that?
No, I think what Bill says is regret is out of the dictionary. He has no regrets. He doesn't feel regrets. He doesn't think that he did anything wrong. He thinks that this was a business relationship, that Walter had a lawyer that he should have been watching out for himself. But I think we let the viewer we present both sides of it, and I think let the viewer decide who is in the right. It's a very sad thing. And I think Walter and Bill, till the end, loved each other a lot, which I think a lot of people would find hard to understand. But they had a lot of love and respect for each other, even till the end. All they wanted to say was good things about each other. So it's very confusing, I think, for many people.
Yeah, and I think Bill, part of the reason Bill doesn't have remorse necessarily is because Bill sees Walter's family as the problem, right? Mm-hmm. Like, from Bill's point of view, he goes, when family gets involved, it usually doesn't go well, right? And like, and Bill would argue like, well, what happened, without Bill, Walter's career sort of wasn't at the same level, right? Now we get into some other extenuating circumstances that I won't spoil here as to why that happens, but I think from Bill's point of view, there are other people to point the finger at.
And to Bill's credit, he answered all of our questions. I mean, first to Alex's credit for working with Bill and getting us that interview. But when he finally did agree to sit down, he answered all of our questions. There was not anything he refused really to discuss, and it was a complicated relationship. And their successes individually are forever going to be linked to one another. We would not know Walter Mercado as the superstar that he was were it not for Bill's efforts in helping him reach these huge heights. And Bill would certainly have not been as successful as he was if he hadn't linked up with Walter. So it's a complicated relationship and a complicated history. And I think that what we try to do in the film is kind of just present the facts as best as possible and let our audience walk away with making up their mind about it all.
No, I think, not to give the film away, it does end on a high. Because I was so like, and I go, oh no, we don't want to be sad, but it does, just not to give it away. Ends on a high. And I will say that when the buzz came out that this movie was coming to Sundance, we were all like little kids. We were all dying to see him, but unfortunately, he did pass. Mm-hmm. But nevertheless, us as grown people all ran towards the Cape to take a picture of it, to stand near it, do all the things that you do when you grow up with someone. And it was just like, oh my God, it's here. And looking at it, it's basically its own thing. Tell the audience, what is it that you want people, to get out of the film personally for you? Since you worked 2 years, you put 2 years into it. What is it that you want them to take away, especially people that didn't get a chance to grow up with Walter?
Yeah, for me personally, I think it like reteaches me these lessons that I learned as a child, that my grandmother taught me, that Walter taught me. And so I hope people feel that connection to their culture, those people who grew up with him. And I hope people will call their grandmothers and get their grandmothers to watch it. But I hope it reminds us of kind of that we learned the most important lessons in life when we were this big, and we just have to keep practicing them.
Absolutely. What about you, Kareem? What do you want them to take away, other than it is a nice film during these times to go to that warm, fun place?
I think what I want folks to take away from it is that you don't have to be a believer in astrology. You don't have to be a believer in religion. You don't have to be a believer in Walter Mercado. But Walter's message was ultimately one of love and peace, that we should live our life and kind of traverse the universe with as much love for our fellow man as possible. And he lived his life that way, even when there were folks who most of us probably would want nothing to do with and would not have anything positive to say. He never had a negative word to say. He only ever focused on the positive. And what a life well lived. And the environment that we're in now, that every day it feels like there's more and more reason to be torn apart, and there's certainly leaders that are trying to do that. What a great message, and what a timeless way to live your life. And I hope that that's what people walk away with, that you don't have to believe in the stars, you don't have to believe in the gods, you just have to believe in love.
Absolutely. And for you, Alex?
And for me, it's really about why we started making this film in the first place, and Christina touched on it. But it's about legacy for me. Like it's both all my grandparents have passed away. And I think, like, on the one hand, we need to remember like what a gift they gave us. Especially as like the children of immigrants, to like sacrifice and come here, and at the same time the responsibility that we have to improve upon what they did and carry that forward. And so I'd like, Walter believed in reincarnation. I kind of believe like Walter lives on in all of us, and so do our grandparents, right? And so we can sort of carry that with us, especially now when things are so challenging.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you guys for taking the time to talk to us. I think, I spoke to another filmmaker, and they said sometimes things happen for a reason. And I feel like this film, maybe you didn't plan on it when you made it for it to come out during these times, but I feel like this film is the mental vacation, for lack of a better word, that we so desperately need right now. And hopefully it will prompt us to call our family, our friends, our abuelos and abuelos and be like, hey, let's hit play together. July 8th, is that correct? Out on Netflix. So again, I thank you so much. I love the film. I know everybody else is going to love it too. And hopefully it will get people that didn't grow up with Walter interested in learning more about Walter.
Thank you so much, Nadia.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
you.
Thank you.
Like,
Is Vin still here? Did we lose
I think
him?
he is. He's in the non.
He's
I'm here.
hiding, right? That's the one thing about this.
Nadia, ¿de dónde es tu familia? Where's your family from?
Brazil.
Brasil, Laurento, ¿no?
Ah, Liga Ya. We didn't even talk about Liga Ya.
Río de Janeiro, la familia, no, mi mamá y mi papá son de Río de Janeiro, pero mi abuelo es de Porto Alegre y mi abuelo se fue de Minas Gerais.
Oh,
Wow.
cool.
But you speak Spanish too, then.
Yeah, it's a weird story. Both of my parents were artists. And so I have had, the world has been my classroom on many levels from a young age. So my parents did a show in Barcelona, Spain. And the blessing is when you're a child, you learn Spanish. You learn languages a lot easier than when you're older, right?
Cool.
So I learned Spanish living in Barcelona, Spain. I even spoke Catalan for a moment. Right now, I can't remember.
Wow.
So please don't test me. But all my friends were Spanish children, and we spent time together. And I think it's easier if you learn how to speak. If you speak Portuguese to learn Spanish, than it is the other way around. So that's how I learned Spanish, and thank God it has stuck with me through the years. It hasn't left me. And oddly enough, I'm a Brazilian girl that was born in Munich, again, because my parents were traveling. My mom was pregnant with me, and the doctor was like, you can't go to Japan because pregnant women didn't fly back then like that. Oddly enough, when I was pregnant, the doctor said, go with God, right? So I learned German and Portuguese and naturally English, and I speak a little bit of French. But again, I have to give my parents all the credit because all these languages seeped into my brain before the age of 12. So I definitely, my husband is not as, not his gift. And he's just like, thank God for you, because we would be stuck if we tried. It would be really, really love. But I have a love of people. So I'm in the perfect business. I love to travel. Hopefully we'll get to do it again once things get back. We get off punishment, as I like to say.
Yeah.
And I'm always curious about other people's culture. And I feel like there's not enough discussion of the magic of Latin America. Like, I feel like in America, we concentrate on certain regions. And I'm like, there's a whole bunch of other countries that are amazing and people migrated from, and they have, and not to mention is our food is amazing. So I feel sorry for people that don't like food, but I'm not that girl. So it's just all of those things, you know what I mean? And that's why, this movie I think is so important, because you don't have to be Puerto Rican. We all have this type of stuff. And my grandmother was definitely the type of woman that do not speak during the novelas. Yeah. And you're just like, what? My grandmother was super religious, but my God, when she would watch her soap operas and you're just like, when you're a kid, you're like, well, wait a minute. She was in love with this one last week, and now she's in love with this one, and this one's going to, what is going on here? I need explanation, right? But they were going to explain it to you because they're mesmerized by the whole thing. I don't have my grandparents anymore either, but I know my grandmother would totally get a kick, and as religious as my grandmother was, she loved Walter. Right? And I'm just like, wait a minute. But you just told us that is against God. But here you are listening to this man giving the horoscope.
I know.
It's an oxymoron, and it's a good oxymoron. And that's why I said it. We were all like little kids standing next to that cape. Grown people, like super up there in age. Get my picture. Did you get my good side? I think if they would have been able to let us try it on, it would have been over.
Yeah.
It's so fragile. We wanted to make one for folks to try on, but we weren't able
to. Listen, even I understand. Lin, he was like, you're letting me wear this?
Oh God, I know. Incredible.
Right? And it's like Puerto Rican flag, and I know he was like, oh my God. But this film is beautiful. You can tell that you have a love for him, and I thought it was very it wasn't exploitative, right? And it was very loving. And at the same time, like I said, as we got to be in his closet. Like, that's my thing. I was like, I know they were like, let's see the stuff.
Yeah.
We want to see
I
stuff.
loved it.
You know what I mean?
It was so much fun.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you get to play, dress up. And again, I think it's perfect for Netflix because it's going to make people are going to get together and hopefully have Twitter parties and be like, are you watching? Oh my God, that's how they do the hair. And yeah, I do.
I hope
Wait, here's the open.
Listen, absolutely. Like, that's to me is like, that's the fun of this film, you know, and that's why I'm so glad it ended the way it ended, because I was like, oh, the first one is, I was like, oh no, we're having fun. We want to be sad. And I loved that it ended. I was like, yay, okay, good. Now we can continue to be happy. But I hope too that Willie's doing well and everything like that. But you should be extremely proud. You don't need me to say that, but I really do think you're going to make a lot of people smile during this.
Thank you so much, Katya.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
No,
Thanks for talking to us today.
Absolutely. You guys be safe. We got to do it. He does the whole thing.
Mucho, mucho.
Mucho amor.
Amor.
Amor. We got to do it. Absolutely.